What's up guys, Kyle here again, and today we are checking out an amp from a brand new builder, the Redbeard Amplification Brutal Machte. Let's do it. Alright guys, hope you're doing great out there today. If this is your first time here at my channel, my name's Kyle, and what I do is I take awesome high gain amps, guitars, cabs, speakers, pickups, pedals, overdrives. I record them with a simple SM57 setup, and I give you guys the unprocessed audio on your end. So if you're into E stand or thrash riffs, drop C hardcore riffs, and dudes whose camera angles are always crooked, you're in the right place. Consider hitting the like button and subscribing on your way out so you don't miss any more of my stuff. Thanks! Alright guys, so today we have an amp from a brand new builder on the cabinet today. This is the Redbeard Amplification Brutal Machte. Brian at Redbeard Amplification reached out to me and asked me if I would be interested in demoing this amplifier on the channel, and he wanted my genuine feedback on it. And I'm always excited to check out amps from new builders, so I said, yeah man, send it out, let's do it. So what is the Brutal Machte? Well, essentially it is a custom build from Brian. It is the amp that he basically said that he always wanted to exist. It's a combination of super clean cleans and a super brutal gain channel with nothing else really in between. And honestly, as a belligerent amateur, I can get behind that. Not the cleans part though. But this is a 2-channel all-tube amplifier. The circuit is all-tube. There is no diodes in the preamp section, and even though it's kind of in a, mid-sized plexi head shell, it is not plexi by any shape of the imagination. It has really nothing to do with a Marshall circuit as far as my ears can tell. It sounds very, very modern, very high gain. We've got lots of clarity. We have lots of high-end focus on this thing. So again, 2 channels. It takes a foot switch to switch over to the clean channel. It has a shared EQ across the front. We also have a master, a resonance, and a presence control over here, and then here is your 3-band EQ in the middle. This is a bass switch. Again, this is a prototype. This is not gonna be on the actual release model. It actually, in my opinion, cuts too much bass, and Brian said the same thing, so he's just gonna leave it essentially how you guys are gonna hear it today, with the bass switch in the on position so that it has more low frequencies. Over here we also have a voicing switch. Now this kind of goes from a little bit more low mid fullness to a very modern voicing. The difference is subtle, but you'll hear it. It's mostly openness and clarity in the mids. This also has a switchable an effects loop on the back, and yeah, that is pretty much all there is to say about this thing. It's a pretty stripped down beast. It is made for all out brutal chugging, so I think that we're gonna get along with this thing. Brian said that he is a big fan of the 6505, 5150, the Mesa Rectifier series, and the Bogner Uberschall. So in that intro clip, I had it dialed in. I had it boosted with the MXR M77 Overdrive. We are playing currently with my Edwards ELP. This guitar has a lace dissonant aggressor in the bridge. We are going into the Mesa traditional cab with vintage 30s here, SM57 on the V30s. So instead of trying to dial this thing down and get crunchy rock tones and stuff out of it, we're just going straight for the high gain here, because that's what this amp is meant for. There really is no in between on that gain control we're gonna mess around with the EQ a little bit. We're gonna mess around with the voicing switch, the presence and resonance, and I'm also gonna try a couple different guitars, a couple different boosts to see overall how this thing handles different stuff being put in front of it. Real quick though, before we do that, I do want to mention that this is a sponsored video. Brian has not only sent me this prototype amp to demo and send back to him, but I'm being paid for this review. I want you guys to know that because transparency for me is very important. But just because this is a sponsored video doesn't mean it's gonna sway my opinion at all. I'm gonna give you guys my honest thoughts on this amplifier, so please keep that in mind. So with that being said, on the front here, I have the master pretty much dimed because I just feel like the amp reacts better, but we'll play around with the volume on the master and the post volumes here in order to see what kind of changes they make to the tone. And then we have everything else set to noon. I've got this gain down at 9 o'clock. We're gonna turn that up pretty quick, but even at 9 o'clock, it's pretty saturated. As you can tell, saturated right off the bat. One thing that I have noticed about this amp pretty quickly is that this presence needs to be pushed up quite a bit in order to kind of get that blanket off the speakers effect. And just like that, we've already got a good bit of presence going. This amp is very tight without a boost in front, even with that gain down at 9 o'clock. Again, no boost in front. We've got a good amount of saturation already. I want to try pushing the mid and the high a little bit to bring this thing to life a little more. All right, so as you can hear, like I said, we have a lot of top end kind of string clarity. Kind of reminds me of the Ola chug pedal that I just demoed not that long ago. It's got a lot of top end grind and clarity to it. Again, in a very modern EQ frequency, it just has a really modern sound to it. So let's go ahead and let's pump up that gain a little bit. Now, one thing I have noticed with this amp is the presence doesn't really act like the presence on something like, say, a rectifier or a 6505. It's definitely in a way different spot in the frequency range. It's in a spot that I personally am not a fan of. It's a little bit on that modern side. Kind of got that quacky thing going on. Again, I think this is gonna work really well for down-tuned guitars. That's pretty much what Brian told me, and I tend to play in E standard for most of my demos, but we'll definitely drop down to D or drop C in order to check that out. But for my personal taste, a little bit too on that modern side. Let's also take a look at this low control, because this low control honestly doesn't seem to make much of a difference. It's not doing a whole lot. Kind of seems like once it's up around this 11 o'clock area, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference after that. That could be due to the fact that we are diming the master control on this, and we have the post volume or the channel volume set a lot lower. So let's kind of reverse that. Let's go down on the master volume and let's boost that post up. Okay, so I'm noticing more of a difference now, but it's not massive. It's pretty subtle, and it seems to affect the upper low frequencies more so than anything. I actually kind of like it set a little bit lower because that makes the palm mutes a little bit more percussive. So let's kind of rely on the resonance to affect that bass response. Let's turn the resonance up. All right, so now we're getting some more of that kind of depth going on, bumping the resonance up even more. And again, this thing is ultra tight, even with that resonance pushed up. Let's get some more preamp gain going. We are getting some noise through the speakers now. Again, very bright, very, very tight. The saturation, it just kind of seems to be really saturated without being muddy. There's definitely a lot of string clarity. I do have a weird frequency coming through the speakers right now. We're actually going to flip that voicing switch. You probably heard the frequency coming through the speakers change a little bit. So that actually did change the voicing. Like I said, more of a low mid grunt. It has kind of more of a rectifier thing going on now. So the low end on this amp is kind of thuddy. It has that like Marshall thud. I know it's not based on a Marshall, but a Marshall kind of has almost this round low mid thud to the palm mutes. It's not like a clank. I definitely noticed that going on in this amp. What I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna pull this preamp down a little bit and we're gonna kick on that MXR M77 again. All right, so as you can tell, it's saturated. The amp is a little bit on the stiff side, which I personally like. It does kind of have a little bit of a similarity in the feel to something like a Swan. Honestly, you are going to want a noise gate for that loop because the hiss coming through the speakers is a little bit loud and the frequency that it's coming through is pretty noticeable. Let's try scooping the mids out a little bit. Oh, that actually took away that frequency quite a bit. I immediately like that better. That has more of a kind of just a rectifier type mid to it. That might be my favorite tone I've gotten out of this thing so far. Man, the mids have a big effect on the overall tone of this amp. Pulling them back a little bit makes me like it a lot better because the mids seem very modern. They have that very, almost like Fortin-esque type of mid-range thing going on. Pulling them back a little bit, and I immediately am just liking what's coming out of the amp a little bit better. Let's pull that resonance back a little bit. Let's try bumping the lows up. All right, I'm liking that tone quite a bit. That is the best that I've had this amp sounding in my personal opinion so far. Let's flip that voicing switch real quick and see what it's like in the more modern setting. That's got a great punch to it. I will say there are some frequencies coming through in the high end that are almost kind of scratchy through the speakers and stuff. It almost seems like it needs like a little bit of a dip in maybe the 4 to 5K region. I also think if it had a little bit less in the 500K region, that would kind of tighten up those palm mutes, make them a little bit punchier. But overall, the voicing of this amp right now sounds really, really brutal. I'm going to go ahead down into D standard. All right, so that's D standard. That sounds nasty. I'm gonna pull the presence back just a tad. All right, so we have a lot of low end punch right now too. Let's push the tight control up on the mud killer. All right, so again, we have a lot of that modern kind of clankiness. Let's pull back the resonance, let's pull back the lows. Okay, not liking the bucks and boosts. Let's try the SD1. That is a nice hardcore tone right there. All right guys, so that is passive pickups. Let's try this thing out with an active pickup and see how it reacts to an active pickup. All right, so that sounds really brutal, like super, super nasty. Again, we still have those mid scoops. Let's pull the mids back up. Okay, so the mids actually sound pretty good with these EMGs. Let's pull the highs back a tad. That seems to smooth it out a little bit on top. Let's add just a touch more presence. All right guys, that's gonna do it for me on the Redbeard Amplification Brutal Mock. What did you guys think? Let me know down in the description of this video. I personally think that there are some really, really cool tones in this amplifier, especially once you start tuning down. It really does have a just, oh man, it's got a brutal like low mid grind to it that is really cool. I do think that the presence and the high end kind of need a little bit of work to be refined, maybe kind of more of a PV type, sizzle type presence. The presence where it's at right now, I feel like it's just not quite affecting the right frequencies. Maybe just for my ears, again, it's kind of reminding me of something that would come from the Fortin family of amps. It's got that very high, quacky grind for the really modern stuff. So if you're tuning down to something like B standard or lower, like a lot of guys are these days, I think that this amp is really, really going to suit you. But for guys like me who are kind of playing more in the E standard, D standard type range, I think it's just a little bit too modern on the top end. I would also like to see a little bit more low end in the EQ. I would like there to be more range in this low control in the preamp in order to really push that bass for the higher tunings. Again, if you're tuning down, I think this thing is gonna have plenty of tight percussive low end for you. But again, somebody like me who tunes up, who tunes a little bit higher, would like to see a little bit more range out of that low control. As of the time of the filming of this video, this is a prototype, but Brian has a few of these things ready to go, and you can choose them with either Hayboard transformers in them for $1,749, or you can get the Mercury Magnetics transformers, which are what is in this model, for $2,249. I will put a link below for you guys to contact Brian if you're interested in getting one of these. Again, he has a couple of these things ready to go. He's hitting the ground running, and I want to thank him very much for sending this video out for me to check out. But again, I want to know what you guys thought down in the comments of this video. Very curious to see what you guys heard on your end that I didn't hear over here on my end. And as always, if you want to support the channel, down in the description of the video or my affiliate links, we've got Sweetwater down there, we've got my Zounds affiliate link down there. So if you shop with either of those companies, hitting those links greatly helps me out, and I really appreciate it. Last but not least, I'm trying really hard to get to 20K subscribers by the end of the year. So if you guys liked what you saw and you're not subscribed, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Kyle here again. We'll see you next time. You know what this wall is missing? Another amp. There we go.